Psychoanalytic or psychosexual theory. Hi, welcome back to the series of theories of child psychology. Psychology is like a skilled locksmith that unlocks the complex chambers of the human mind. In this video, we will discuss the first psychodynamic theory based on the work of Sigmund Freud, who unlocks how our hidden thoughts, early memories, and relationships shape how we behave and feel. The fundamental assumption is that childhood experiences impact our behavior and thoughts as adults. Let's jump right into this interesting theory known as the psychoanalytical or psychosexual theory. Sigmund Freud is also known as the father of modern day psychiatry. His interest in human development paved the way to explain the disorders in personality as he observed various psychiatric patients. Did you know? The Time magazine selected Freud as one of the most important thinkers of the 20th century. According to Freud, human development takes place in five different stages, known as the psychosexual stages, starting from birth to adulthood. They are oral stage, from birth to 18 months, anal stage, from 18 months to 3 years, phallic stage, from 3 to 5 years, latency stage, from 5 to 11 years, and genital stage, from 11 to 13 years. At each stage, sexual energy is expressed in a particular part called the erogenous zone. During his research, he concluded personalities originate from biological roots such as genetics, physiology, and evolution. These shape the fundamental characteristics and behaviors of living organisms. The first step to understanding all these aspects is understanding the complex human mind. Freud proposed two models of the human mind, namely the topographic model, the psychic model, or the psychic triad. Let us now get into the details of the topographic model of the human mind. Freud compared the human mind to an iceberg, where only 10% is visible and 90% is beneath the surface. According to this model, the human mind is divided into three parts. First is the conscious mind, which includes our current thinking and objects of attention. It constitutes a huge part of our awareness. For instance, when asked what you are doing, the conscious mind swiftly provides an answer, reflecting your immediate awareness of your surroundings. The second part is the pre-conscious mind, which involves ordinary memory, knowledge, and things that we are aware of but not paying attention to. However, they can be deliberately brought into the conscious mind by focusing on it. For instance, when you meet an old schoolmate and initially can't recall the name, but as you converse, the name suddenly pops up in your mind. It's like a moment of mental retrieval where the pre-conscious mind kicks in, bringing forth information that was momentarily out of reach. The third aspect is the unconscious or subconscious mind, which includes the content that is out of reach of the conscious mind. This is a dump box or a reservoir for urges, feelings, and ideas. It exerts an influence on our actions and our conscious awareness. This is the most controversial of the three parts. Its contents are unacceptable or unpleasant, such as feelings of pain, anxiety, or conflict, and most of what drives us is buried in our unconscious mind. For instance, Tara, a talented dancer with a love for dressing up, developed a phobia of having her ear touched during makeup. This fear stemmed from childhood experiences of chronic ear infections, now buried in her unconscious mind, shaping her behavior without her conscious understanding. Just like an iceberg, the conscious mind is visible above the surface, while the preconscious and unconscious mind remain hidden beneath, unseen but influential in shaping our thoughts and actions. In his ongoing research, Freud acknowledged that while the topographic model was valuable for understanding information, processing, and storage, it fell short of explaining other significant psychological phenomena. Consequently, he introduced the psychic model, or triad, to address these limitations. According to this model, there are three psychic structures: the id, ego, and superego. The id sets primal urges, the ego makes decisions, and the superego guides moral standards, creating a balanced psychological composition. Just as instruments in a band play together, the id, ego, and superego in Freud's model work in harmony to shape our personality. However, they vary in strength and impact from person to person. Let us get into the details of each of these. Id is the basic structure of personality, also known as the pleasure principle, as it strives for immediate gratification. It is present at birth, is the unconscious part of our mind, and is impulse ridden. It lies deep inside the unconscious mind, consisting of our basic urges, needs, and desires: hunger, sexual desires, anger, impulsive desires to own or buy something, engaging in risky activities, addiction, and instant gratification like binge watching TV shows or indulging in excessive eating are the feelings governed by id. For instance, a sudden urge to purchase a dress showcased in the store. Moving on to ego, the reality principle. It is our conscious mind. The ego develops out of the id after birth at about the second to sixth month of life. It is concerned with memory and judgment. Developing after birth, the ego grows and matures with age, serving to modify and regulate the id's impulses on a practical and realistic basis. It is a mediator between the demands of the id and the morals of the superego. For instance, while the id insists on buying the dress, the ego always tries to satisfy the id. Therefore, the ego evaluates buying it by considering budget and need. Moving on to the superego. This represents the morality principle or the internal policeman of the mind. It operates in the preconscious state and typically develops between the ages of 3 to 5 years. This aspect of the psyche guides individuals to act in socially responsible and acceptable ways. Its primary function is to regulate and restrain the impulses of the id, while encouraging the ego to pursue moralistic objectives. For instance, the superego does not factor in id. It only decides whether buying the dress at that moment is appropriate or not. These are not three separate entities with clearly defined boundaries. These aspects are dynamic and always interact to influence an individual's overall personality and behavior. Usually, the ego acts as a balanced system, satisfying both the id and superego as best as it can. Let us learn this interaction with an example. A student found a lot of videos of interest online. Id wanted to watch them all the time. Ego said he needed to study too, and superego warned about neglecting his responsibilities. Finally, the balance between the three was established, and the student decided to watch videos that were both fun and educational. Although the ego has a tough job to do, it has a little help from anxiety, which helps mediate between the ego and basic urges, moral values, and the real world. When anxiety is experienced, a defense mechanism called the ego defense mechanism kicks up. These defense mechanisms serve to shield the ego from internal conflicts and reduce the levels of anxiety, allowing for a more adaptive response to challenging situations. This can manifest itself in different forms. The first one is displacement, which is the transfer of desires or impulses onto a substitute person or object. For instance, when a student receives criticism from a teacher, they might displace their emotions onto less threatening targets by expressing their frustration through actions like shouting at younger students, slamming doors, or stomping their feet. For instance, children from extremely strict and unsafe homes may become bullies in schools. Another form is called projection, where individuals unconsciously attribute their unacceptable thoughts, feelings, or behaviors to someone else. This helps them cope with internal conflicts and discomfort. For instance, when someone feels jealous but doesn't want to admit it, they might accuse others of being jealous instead. Moving on to the next technique called reaction formation. This is a psychological defense mechanism in which an individual exhibits behaviors that is the direct opposite of their true impulses or feelings. For instance, when a person is not able to control anger, they begin to laugh to prevent anxiety. The next technique is regression. An individual attempts to avoid current anxiety by withdrawing to patterns of early age that cause a sense of comfort. For instance, severe anxiety may cause an adult to regress into a childhood habit of nail biting. Moving on to a technique called denial. This simple technique involves the denial of reality to reduce anxiety. For instance, if a student is told about a lack of interest in studies and poor performance, the student does not want to accept the fact. The next technique is the identification. This is incorporating an external object or another person into one's personality. For instance, when a child sees a sibling, a friend, or a parent being praised or well accepted by everyone around, they begin to mimic them. Moving on to a technique called sublimation. This is similar to displacement but takes place when we manage to displace our unacceptable emotions into behaviors that are constructive and socially acceptable, rather than destructive activities. For instance, a child who feels isolated or depressed due to the lack of attention at home or school begins to channel the emotion through art or music in a constructive manner. The last technique is rationalization. This is an attempt to explain our behavior to ourselves and others in a rational way, or find logic in one's actions. For instance, a natural calamity is named as God's will, or a student scoring less mark blames the teacher. We all use ego defenses which help determine our psychological adjustment and physical health. Based on all this, Freud stressed that the first 5 years of life are crucial to the formation of adult personality. The id, ego, and superego must be satisfied as per the social norms to maintain their gratification centers or the erogenous zones in different areas of the body in balance. At different stages of growth, they have a conflict as they approach each stage of psychosexual development. The resolution of each of these conflicts requires the expenditure of sexual energy. And this gives rise to a concept called fixation. Some people cannot leave one stage and proceed to the next. One reason for this may be that the needs of the developing individual at any particular stage may not have been adequately met, in which case there is frustration. Or possibly, the person's needs may have been so well satisfied that he or she is reluctant to leave the psychological benefits of a particular stage in which there is overindulgence. For instance, oral fixation can lead to habits like nail biting or smoking. Anal fixation can lead to overly neat or messy behaviors. Pop quiz. This brings us to the end of this video. In the next one, we will continue this concept by discussing the stages of psychosexual development. We hope you had fun learning with us. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel.